I did my article review over the effects of repeated readings on the oral reading fluency. Oral reading fluency is defined as an effortless and smooth reading of words. It is essential in gathering meaning from text, so it makes it easier for you to comprehend what you are reading. Fluency is defined as the ability to read with accuracy, speed, and proper expression. I believe the purpose of the article here was to determine the effects of peer-mediated repeated reading on the oral reading fluency. The authors of this article wanted to know basically if the peer-mediated repeated reading improves students' oral reading rate across baseline levels. Some research questions that I found in the article were, what can teachers do to integrate repeated reading into the classroom? Is one that they wanted to answer by the end of the study, as well as, are there gains in reading fluency during repeated reading that would carry over to unfamiliar reading? So that means that something that they're not super good at reading or something that they haven't read before would be easy to read after repeated readings. So the methods, first are the participants. They was a target students of 12 African American students ages 9 through 12. 6 of them had a learning disability, 3 of the 12 had repeated a grade, and 1 had actually repeated grades 3 and 4. The whole class of 32 fourth grade students was monitored or observed during this study, but the 12 students with the learning disability were their target students to see if whether or not what they were doing was working or not. The teacher of the fourth grade class was also involved. She had 35 years of teaching experience. She was also trained. Methods in the data collection process took place at an urban charter school in the Midwest. The whole class was designated to read silently after recess every day for 30 minutes. During the week, there were 3 days where they pulled the target students out of class during silent reading and started their tiers of the repeated reading tests. They used a Dorf progress monitoring passage to individual students. The target students did it once a week, and the non-target students, so the rest of the kids in the class, did it once per month. They also kept track of the correct words per minute when they were reading. That was the dependent variable. And then they used something called the Dybel system as well. Each student was assigned a repeated reading folder which contained the reading passage that they were rereading, an exam copy of the word count, a good tutor card, a correction card, and a reading log. So the good tutor card is like a 4x6 index card that they placed on their desk during repeated reading, so it could be easily accessible to the teacher. And then as students were engaged in tutoring, the teacher walked around the room and stamped the good tutor cards of students who demonstrated appropriate tutoring behavior. Inside the reading log, students recorded the number of stamps they had received during each session. The purpose of the reading log was to record the date, number of words read correctly, as well as the number of stamps each student had received during the reading sessions. And these sessions were done where students sat across from one another. They read together, reading each paragraph. They were instructed to reread the passage for a 10-minute duration. Then they were asked to individually read the passage, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then the multiple baseline across participants. This evaluated the effects of the repeated reading sessions on oral fluency. No withdrawal of treatment, and this can also be something that is used for more than one student. I found that this article was both quantitative and qualitative, but first, the quantitative, they used surveys and questionnaires, and social validity to basically get the people involved, their opinions on whether or not they believed it worked, if they thought it would work, what they would change, basically. Individual effect sizes and percentage changes. So this is like the method that they used to calculate the changes that they were seeing. The dual criteria method, this drew a baseline mean, and second criterion lie on the basis of the baseline mean, as well as the calculated percentage change for each student, which was the mean level of performance during baseline versus the mean level of performance during intervention. So those were all methods, I believe, that qualify as quantitative because they were all formulas and numbers. Then there was qualitative parts in there too where they used the visual analysis method as well as observation, the teacher observing the children. She made checklists to make sure they were hitting the marks that they were supposed to be hitting. The focus groups is also part of qualitative. The 12 students with the learning disabilities were the focus group of this study. The results from this study were as follows. So all students did improve their oral reading rates, but none of them reached benchmark goals for 4th grade. So this proved that repeated reading does work and helps enhance effective reading fluency. So ways that I would implement this in my classroom is I like the idea of the paired reading, repeated readings, where one student reading at grade level is paired with another student who is not, so they can kind of help that student read better, maybe by teaching them tricks that I, as an older teacher, wouldn't know. I feel like some students learn better from other students. And then as well as having that group of struggling students meet 3 times per week to reread passages and kind of talk it out with each other and reread it, kind of what they did with I like the repeated reading folder, so I think that would be something that I'd like to implement as well, because I feel like the stamps would maybe kind of be like an incentive to see who could get the most stamps, things like that. How it relates to what we have gone over in class so far would be that research has shown that repeated and monitored oral reading improves fluency and overall reading achievement. That was in our textbook, which is basically what the results were of this study. Methods used involving words count per minute was something that was mentioned as well, which is what basically they went over a lot in there too, that they kept track of how many words they got correct every minute. Repeated readings interventions for students with learning disabilities are associated with improvements in reading rate, accuracy, and comprehension, which is exactly what I just went over with the students with the learning disabilities. Were the 12 students that were the focus of this study, and it did improve their reading by doing this repeated reading process. And my sources.